Welcome back to Rider Potential. This is the series where I take a look at seasons of Kamen Rider and how they could be adapted by taking a look at the aesthetics, source footage, and possible sales of the show. This series is just for fun because who knows if Kamen Rider will ever be adapted. I don't expect Hasbro or anyone official to use my ideas, let alone adapt Kamen Rider anytime soon, so please don't take anything I say in this video here too seriously. Especially because today I'm going to be going over Kamen Rider Den-O, one of the most fun seasons of Kamen Rider, in the Season 1 finale of Rider Potential. So be sure to stay tuned until the end of this video if you want to hear what I'm going to be doing next for Season 2. If you want my in-depth thoughts on Kamen Rider Den-O, you should also go check out my full review on it. I'll have that linked in the description. And if you want to stay tuned for just more Rider Potential videos in general, or just check out the ones I've already done, consider subscribing to this channel. If I hit 20,000 subscribers, I'm going to make part 3 of my Tokusatsu fan ideas series, where I talk about fan-submitted toku ideas. So be sure to subscribe if you aren't already so we can get a little bit closer to that goal. So I guess now we should start talking about Den-O. Sanjo? That's not how you use that, So one of the best parts of the Den-O aesthetics, in my opinion, is how, modern it all feels, even though the season is, over 10 years old at this point. These suits are the first that really pushed the limits of the Kamen Rider bug eyes, in my opinion, without leaving the entire idea behind, like a few other seasons have done. Den-O's sword form, the base form basically, just kind of merges the classic eyes and antenna into what kind of comes across as a futuristic evolution of Ichigo's helmet minus the green. And then for the armor, instead of just this, plain looking armor, we've got a nice simplistic red design that creates a nice unique personality for the suit and gives it that armored look that it was going for. Then we have the other Rider base form suits of Den-O that kind of further this idea. First off, they just completely throw away the typical Kamen Rider look. Axe has the full axe head, gun form completely removes the mouthpiece, and only Den-O rod form really has the normal bug eyes. Then we move on to their armor, which obviously are different colors, so you can tell they're different, but they all feature drastically different designs. You've got the big dragon wings, I guess, of gun. Axe and rod kind of have similar designs, but there's still some unique detailing, and one's more blue and the other's more black than gold, really, which is really cool. All of these little details help each of these suits contrast each other as a representation of these each being technically different people, I guess, but it's still the same Kamen Rider in technicality. So because they're all drastically different armor sets, they are nicely tied together with this undersuit, which is a very nice simplistic black and white, and because of this, it ties all the forms together as one rider, allows the distinguishing armor pieces to stand out, and it's also a nice reference to Ryotaro being the shy host of the eccentric, colorful Imagin. To further connect all these base forms together, they also kind of just use the same armor set that has minor flips, hinges, and new faceplates that changes the entire look of this upper section. That further demonstrates how this is all the same rider system, and it's one of my favorite parts of the aesthetics. It looks really nice, it's a really cool idea, and it visually demonstrates how the later forms are more powerful as well. While wing form kind of just looks like a normal Den-O form, because it's got the recolored undersuit and the armor parts aren't the same as the armor parts used for the main set, it does kind of demonstrate that it's a different design of this Den-O rider system because Sieg is super powerful, apparently. I don't know why. Anyway, the idea kind of carries over to liner form, despite that being the final form. Just because of how it worked in the story, it's once again just a base form recoloring, and it has, again, a new armor set that's different from the others, but it's also not really a repaint like wing form. The more unique helmet, I would say, helps to demonstrate the power set because it's incorporating the colors of pretty much all the other forms, and it's a train head. Climax takes a different approach, taking a step back, where it doesn't repaint everything, and instead creates a new armor system with all the train tracks running across the body, once again incorporating the aesthetics, and now we bring in the unique big visors of the other forms to clearly represent this as the most unique Den-O form as a combination of multiple Imagine. Zeronos has a lot of the same ideas as those base Den-O forms, where Alter form has another unique take on the Kamen Rider eyes and antenna, where we've got like a rectangular thing going on, and now they're like kind of horns, and it also has more of a simplistic armor design instead of swapping out armor like Den-O. And what this does is we can have Vega form just add onto the space form as opposed to swapping it out. And much like the other Imagine forms, he completely redesigns his visor, bringing back the normal rounded eyes, and now we have this big additional head crest. I guess it represents Denib's big personality. For Zeronos' final form, we obviously just have the Zero form, which is obviously just a repaint of Alter form, so it's not as complex as Vega form, but I think that's a really nice representation of this basically just being a new power source of the Alter form, and it lets Vega form stay unique because it's actually a combination of two users, while Alter is just kind of Yuto again. And it's a very nice repaint, very, very nice. Keeping Zero form simplistic, since Den-O doesn't really incorporate into it, represents a nice core aspect of this show, where almost all of the riders in Den-O sport a completely unique head and armor design, and it lets them all really stand out from each other in really big ways. Den-O and New Den-O have pretty similar heads, but completely different chest plates, while the opposite is true of Gao and Yuki. So how are these forms all linked together? Haha, link because trains. Well, with the train motif and the platform, which is the best pun in Kamen Rider, by the way, absolutely amazing. All of the riders, despite their differences, not only have the same general platform undersuit design with very minor coloration differences, but they also feature the same basic transformation gimmick with these train tracks summoning the armor attachments before they attach and lock into place, and similarly, the visor appears on the helmet like a train before it locks into place. I don't really mention the henshins in regards to the aesthetics, but because all of these riders use the same henshin, despite how different all these suits are separated from the undersuit, it works perfectly to connect them all, and it works even better since it's utilizing the season's unique train gimmick. Overall, I would say the Den-O aesthetics are really cool. Each design is great with a combination of simplistic and complex elements so that each has its own unique personality per se, but specific details clearly link all of them under the same season and keep some level of consistency. Some of them are great references to original Kamen Riders, others are perfect evolutions of them, and others are just completely different. This makes them great for an adaptation. If this was a hypothetical first season, it sets the stage for other more classic designs to come after because we're already laying the groundwork for classic rider designs. Of course, if this came later, just like it did in Japan, it fits right in with the established rider motifs and it still paves the way for new ones because of all these new ideas it's introducing. So my Den-O adaptation has a lot of crazy ideas and not a lot of time to go over them. This is probably the most complete idea set I have, so if you've seen the original season, anything I don't explicitly mention, it's the same as it is in that season. If you haven't seen the original season, I'll do my best to explain without spoiling. So the show starts much like it did originally. The Imagine arrive in 2007, or whenever the show takes place. Momotaros makes a contract with Ryotaro as the Bat Imagine, the first Imagine, starts attacking, and Hana arrives to meet Ryotaro and give him the Den-O belt. She tells Ryotaro that he's the only one who can become Den-O and save the world, and quickly helps him achieve the platform, and says she'll deal with the formalities later or whatever. Ryotaro starts fighting the Imagine and gets beaten up, and suddenly, to Hana's horror, Momotaros possesses Ryotaro and switches to sword form, as he declares that he now has control of the singular point and the power to destroy the future. We're quickly taken into Ryotaro's mind as we see some kind of internal struggle between himself and Momotaros, a battle of the minds. And I'm not even gonna bother explaining what exactly is said between the two because I don't want to butcher anything, but simply put, we realize that Momotaros is kind of just following orders. He doesn't really know what he's doing, and since Ryotaro is Ryotaro, he's a really nice guy, he manages to convince Momotaros to not do that. And Momotaro's, doesn't become good because the next few episodes kind of develop him more to become a better person, but he basically kind of sort of allows Ryotaro to get back in control, and as sword form, they defeat the Bat Imagine. Then we get a bit of explanation from Hana. Ryotaro is a singular point, as Momotaro's found out, a human with unique capabilities, and as such, he has been selected to become Den-O to battle the Imagine, which are beings that just live to cause chaos and despair across timelines using their unique ability to time travel. To stop the spread of the Imagine and the world's going into chaos, there's this organization called Eve that locates singular points across multiple timelines and has them become time Kamen Riders using the power of the time trains. Hana was sent by Eve to this timeline since they were alerted to the fact that it had no rider stationed there, but it was open to Imagine attacks. But Hana was surprised to see that, it wasn't all destroyed here. Hana is in charge of the Denliner, a unique time train with multi-form functionality, but because of Momotaro's possessing Ryotaro before he became Den-O, this multi-form functionality is just locked to sword form now. Obviously, we're not locked to sword form for very long because the other Imagine find their way into Ryotaro's life and one by one slowly unlock these different forms, so this is why one Imagine is linked to a specific form just because of how things unfolded in the show. And from there, the show kind of just goes through the motions. We find out about the different Imagine. Zeronos will arrive. I'll get to him in a moment. We will remove the movie. Movie will not be in the show. Climax form is going to be from basically just an accident from when all four Imagine possessed Ryotaro at the same time, and Hana created the Keitaro's phone to harness that power. Because of this, Hana is actually going to act as owner in this show. We're replacing owner with Hana, and this moment with the Keitaro's phone will reveal that she has a bit of a technical side to her, but when Ryotaro asks Hana about it, she just kind of ignores him. Now, Zeronos is the same character as well. He's the past version of Ryotaro's sister's fiance that disappeared like a few months ago, and he happens to also be contracted with an Imagine, which once again surprises Hana because that doesn't usually happen. So because of that, Zeronos has this unique rider system and the unique time train, and he's like a free agent in Eve. Now, a bit after the halfway point of the show, after we, go through the motions with Zeronos and Den-O, Sieg will debut a few episodes after Climax form. What happens is Sieg appears by possessing Den-O, attaining the wing form, and just instantly destroying an Imagine as he declares it's time to resume his work. Deneb, the Zeronos Imagine, will recognize him and he explains what's going on here. Sieg was the original time Kamen Rider of this Den-O timeline, and he was basically a rogue Imagine that just kind of deemed himself above world domination or whatever. He's Sieg, he's like, I'm not gonna do this crap. And he joined Eve, and he just uses a belt system since he's just an Imagine. He doesn't need a whole thing. When the version of Zeronos that Ryotaro knew secretly became a time rider in this timeline again, Sieg and Zeronos would team up and fight together in this timeline until they fought a mysterious Kamen Rider. And basically the Kamen Rider was so powerful that Sieg sacrificed himself to defeat him, but as a result he was sent spiraling through time until he possessed Ryotaro, sensing like all the Imagine rider system stuff. Hana seems interested in the mention of this mysterious Kamen Rider, but she doesn't really mention it to anyone. Sieg's introduction will create some kind of internal conflict with Ryotaro, as becoming a time rider for Eve gave Ryotaro a new direction in life, along with new friends with the Imagine, and Sieg returning as basically the new time rider of this timeline kind of makes him feel like it was for nothing. So over the next few episodes with Sieg, Ryotaro basically comes to terms with this. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, his transformation into Time Rider Den-O means nothing, but the memories he's made mean something to him, and that's all that matters to him, really. So seeing this, Sieg has a change of heart and kind of realizes the same thing happens with him, where becoming a Time Rider for Eve gave him purpose since he didn't want to destroy the world like normal Imagine. So because of this, Sieg decides to work with the Denliner crew, and it creates Cho Climax form for a few episodes before Sieg leaves because he's Sieg and he needs to go do stuff. Or he could stay. I just wrote it in that he would leave because he's not really in the show, but he could stay and we get a few extra fight scenes with Cho Climax and Wing form. That would be really cool. As we get closer to the finale, Kai is introduced, and he's the mastermind behind all of the Imagine attacks, he's sending them out, but he also is the Kamen Rider that battled Sieg and Xeranos in the past. He is Kamen Rider Yuki, and he has an Imagine of his own, which is the Death Imagine, and the Death Imagine can possess Yuki to become the Skull form, because doing this will reveal that Kai is an alternate timeline Ryotaro, one where he wasn't a singular point. Basically, in some alternate timeline somewhere out there, the moment in the beginning where Ryotaro convinced Momotaros to become good didn't really go that way always. In some alternate timeline, Ryotaro was not approached by Hana to become Den-O, and he was not possessed by Momotaros, he was possessed by the Death Imagine. And because of the Death Imagine, and just because he didn't really know about Den-O, he didn't try to change the Death Imagine's mind, and he instead gave in to this path of conquest, and they gained the power to destroy that timeline, acquire the Yuki belt from the Time Rider of that timeline, and then move on just to destroy other timelines like an Imagine warlord. Eventually, he was temporarily defeated by Sieg and Xeranos, but he has resurged now because of the whole Imagine thing going on. They just let him come back, I guess. Then we discover that the singular point Yuki defeated in his original timeline was Hana. Hana was the original Time Rider of the Denliner, but she was defeated by Yuki, and because of that, she lost her entire timeline and her memories. As such, she basically feels guilt after meeting Yuki again, wondering how many timelines have been destroyed because she wasn't strong enough to defeat him. At the same time, we'll have the Death Imagine start to go through a change of heart. He sees how happy this Imagine crew is with the Den-O version of Ryotaro and wonders if things could have gone differently, especially after Yuki Ryotaro starts to be more crazed in his attempts to destroy this timeline, which is proving more difficult because of the Xeranos plan. This dynamic comes to a head just before the finale arc of the show. Hana reclaims her memories because of the Xeranos plan, and now she gains new determination to defeat Yuki and avenge her old timeline. So she taps back into her old power set and says she doesn't care if she's defeated like last time, now she has friends to help her. And what this does is prompts the Death Imagine to leave Yuki. He has his full change of heart, and he changes into Neo-Taros as Hana's weapon to strike down Yuki so that the things will be different this time. In anger, the newly weakened Yuki decides to use all his power to spread Imagine throughout the entire timeline and slowly work his way back in time and try to destroy everything that way. The last few episodes of the show will focus on the new Kamen Rider Den-O with Hana and Neo-Taros working together with the rest of the crew. I feel like the sass of Kotaro in the little original new Den-O footage works perfectly for Hana, and I think that making her a rider that's super dependent on an Imagine partner is a perfect evolution of her character arc. We can also briefly feature the Vega new Den-O form with Deneb, and it's a cool tie to the Xeranos plane revealing her past, in my opinion. I just wouldn't call her new Den-O because she's like technically the old Den-O, and I also am not good with names. Let me know what you would call this new rider. All in all, Yuki is defeated by all the Kamen Riders of the season, but we're gonna use the footage of the finale of the final countdown movie because I just think this final battle is fantastic. We get all of the main forms of one Kamen Rider transforming together, only possible because of how the season works, and if you had access to this footage for a finale, why wouldn't you try to work it in? It's great. That's basically what my end goal was with this adaptation idea. I know originally I said my idea was going to be worked around the rider system, but I thought it would be much cooler to try to incorporate Yuki and new Den-O into the show specifically to use this finale, and in turn fill out the universe a bit more with the idea of the time Kamen Riders and give Kai a bit more of an interesting story. As always, if you have your own adaptation ideas, be sure to let me know about them down in the comments. Ore Sanjo! So, money time. Obviously there's room to have like a singular gimmick figure that can swap through the different armors. There was actually a really cool one in Japan, but this segment is focused on money. So, the main four forms are split into different figures, and then we also get the wing form as a separate figure, climax form, liner form, and platform for good measure since it pops up quite a few times on its own. The three Xeranos forms get the same treatment because, no gimmicks here. We gotta make the money. And we're already done with forms, but we're not really done with figures. Since Den-O has the Imagine, the fun, quirky, suited characters that can be very marketable, I would expect figures to be made of the hero Imagine and make them in scale with the other figures. Then there's the 4 main forms and Xeranos as big vinyl figures, and that's it. In the roleplay section, we've got to start off with the main Den-O belt, of course, then the Xeranos belt, and sadly the wing form belt, because it was sold as a different belt in Japan. The design is slightly different underneath the different buckle piece, so I'd have to add it as another belt here. For electronic weapons, there's the Den Gasher, the Zero Gasher, the Denebik Buster, and the big boy Den Common Sword. Since the Imagine are included as separate figures, I think it's also fair to include the weapons that they wield occasionally in the show, in the cheaper category of weapons though. Then for gimmicks, there's the Kateros phone, and that's it. That's Heisei Phase 1 for you. The total sales for Den-O is $585, which is pretty decent considering its age actually. It even beats out Double, which is a Heisei Phase 2 show. Obviously, it still comes nowhere close to build in 01, but it's just because it's built in 01. Den-O obviously doesn't have any sort of gimmick system, and it doesn't really need one considering the nature of the belt, so I can't really work that in. I thought it would be kind of interesting to have the different forms access with different colored ride passes, kind of like Xeranos, but the buttons are right there on the belt, so you can't really do anything with that. So to instead look at how the sales could be improved, like I always do for some reason, I'll include my own adaptation ideas for once. Going back to figures, we can add in the new Den-O Strike form, new Den-O Vega form, Yuki Skull form, and Yuki Hijack form, then Cho Climax, and the Death Imagine and Neo Taros. Back to roleplay, we can add the new Den-O belt and the Teddy sword. And for gimmicks, now we can add a faceplate swap set for the Yuki forms to get used on the wing form buckle, since it's the same undersuit buckle. And doing this, these hypotheticals would bump up total sales to $735. Still not really that close to build or 01, and it's a pointless number for future Rider Potential videos, but I think it's still a good look at how Den-O's marketability can be expanded upon with the addition of a few of the characters from the many Den-O specials. It's the Season 1 finale, so what is there to say about Den-O that I haven't said about all the other seasons? Its aesthetics are just really cool, utilizing the train motif in unique and inventive ways to make it stand out as more than just the train Kamen Rider, and instead more of a season that's designs are extremely unique, not only in comparison to other Kamen Rider suits, but also with suits in the same show. This gives you a lot more wiggle room with the adaptation compared to other seasons, because there are so many unique ideas and characters from the original season that you can either develop and improve or just pluck out of a random movie and turn into a main protagonist or antagonist. What this does is make the possible sales much more flexible than they usually are. The base sales Den-O provides aren't really amazing, but because there's so much you can add, the sales can be shaped to your liking. Much like the main 4 Den-O forms, there's just a lot of mobility and rearranging that the Den-O season as a whole provides, so that it can become the perfect adaptation from what I would already consider an already almost perfect season. And that concludes Season 1 of Rider Potential. Thank you everyone for your support on the Rider Potential series. I'm sorry that it took so long to finish this season. That's not really fun for anyone. So I'm hopefully planning to get Season 2 finished before the end of this year, because there's actually a season I have to get finished before the end of the year because of an anniversary. Oops, I may have said a bit too much. All I can confirm for now is that the next episode will be adapting Kamen Rider Kabuto, and the next 3 episodes of the season involve this image somehow. I don't really know what the image is, I just know there's some weird image here that has the other 3 seasons incorporated into it. If you want to stay tuned for all of those episodes and more, be sure to subscribe to this channel and consider becoming a patron if you want to get some early sneak peek stuff, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you for watching.